Fresh stitches under my hat. Teacher has a no hats in class policy. Sure thing. The car accident was of the side impact variety and it was brutal. This was in the days before airbags and seatbelt laws. 1 second I'm driving and the next I'm halfway out the passenger window watching blood run off my head to pool in the glass of a previously closed window. Another second ticks by and I'm in the receiving 13 crude stitches for 11 inches of wide open scalp. I lost more than 2 pints of blood and a large patch of hair. I also lost my favorite white fishnet t-shirt, but that's a separate tragedy. That Friday of a Labor Day weekend was how my name shows up in the newspaper list of Labor Day weekend accidents. Tuesday comes and I go to class at the local college. Being a teenager gave me the gift of immortality. There I was, fully ambulatory, just 4 days after a serious car accident. For the sake of propriety, I'm wearing a hat to cover the fresh injury. It was a white Panama hat with a bright 80s-style hatband. As this was 1983, everything was 80s style, but that's a separate tragedy. Hobbling along, I make it to sociology just as class was beginning. I take a seat at the back of class and settle in. The conversation went something like this. Excuse me, could you remove your hat please? The teacher had her own sense of propriety. My hat didn't fit with proper classroom attire. I was in a car accident, I replied. Did she hear my words or was one of her rude students muttering another in a career-long list of excuses? Likely the latter was the case. Take the hat off. You cannot wear that in my class, indicated she was not happy with my hat. Not at all. Well, okay then. Off comes my hat. Roughly a third of my hair had been shaved off. The wound was pink and puckered. The seam had a line of dried blood in it. The wound began an inch beyond my missing hairline and continued back, branching into a Y shape. The surgeon's instructions were to keep the wound clean, dry, and unbandaged. Lucky for all in attendance, my mother had washed my scalp the previous day. She used the word gore at some point to describe what was washing off. Imagine you're one of my classmates. Whatever you would say at that point would be something I heard from my classmates and friends. Ah, you can put your hat back on, said the teacher. Not before a little malicious compliance, I won't. But I can't wear hats in class, I replied. I mean, I can do it, but not if I'm breaking the rules. Please put your hat on. Okay, if you insist, and the hat went back on my head. My advice is not to engage in malicious compliance on the first day of class. Not in a course where the teacher gives essay questions. That was the only C I received that semester, but that's a separate tragedy. You would have been the talk of the staff room. Side note on the doctor. He was a cardiovascular surgeon. The limited number of stitches was due to his wanting to save my life and not caring how pretty it looked. He was wearing golfing pants. I asked, "They call you in off the course?" He replied something affirmative. I'm now in my 50s and still have all my hair, by the way. I'd be happy to never see that scar on display ever again. Rip white fishnet t-shirt. I DK what it is about your attitude but I love the whole. But that's a separate tragedy, comments just a complete show of oh well shit happened im fine fuck it. And just like that, we all get a new catchphrase. This is amazing. Also I'm so glad you're okay. It's crazy to think we used to just drive around with such limited safety precautions lol. I had a similar experience to yours when my best friend was diagnosed with cancer our senior year. We both shaved our heads and were wearing winter hats because it was cold and we were teenage girls trying not to draw attention. A teacher yelled at us across the hall, "Nice hats. Take 'em off." My friend looked at him and said, "But I have cancer." He was so mortified and we still chuckle about it today. So, Joe Cocker's 1986 version of "You Can Leave Your Hat On" was sung for you. Sort of fits in with the fishnet t-shirt. Love your writing style. Thanks for the great read, Grin. I'd like to echo the sentiments of many other comments here. You have an excellent writing still that is genuinely delightful to read. If you have ever taken the slightest interest in writing then please consider writing a book. I reckon you could make paint drying prose a pleasantly exciting experience. I can picture your mom calmly washing chunks of meat off your noggin with all her mom freak out kept securely inside. Well, there goes the Rhodes Scholar brain cells upside down face. That's a lot of tragedies there. I get it though, I was a teenager in the 80s too. I would have been tempted to leave it off the whole class. It seems the world has gained a new catchphrase, but that's a separate tragedy. But that's a separate tragedy sounds like it should be a meme. Upvoted for your writing skill. I have a feeling, but that's a separate tragedy, and this post will become an instant classic, internet sensation. Congrats. I need, in writing, permission to wear this hat in class and a statement that it will not affect my grade to do so. Given my own college experience in the 1990s, I'm unconvinced that your grade was a separate tragedy. Please tell me you're a writer. Being in any other field would be a separate tragedy. Hey, I was there during the whole Panama Jack fashion thing. It was a beautiful thing. You just made that's a separate tragedy my new favorite phrase. Going to use it as much as I can. Thank you. I like your story, but that's a separate tragedy. You're an excellent storyteller. The classic rule of threes. I would have kept the hat off just to make her uncomfortable and be a huge middle finger. That is a positively Shakespearean tale, if only for the three separate tragedies. I love how every thread is a separate tragedy. Is it just me, or I was in a car accident, not enough to explain the issue? Perhaps if Op had said, I was in a car accident and the hat is covering a big scar, then the teacher would have understood. To me the teacher didn't seem ill-intentioned, so it's hard to get behind the malicious compliance here. Personally, I would have found a way to alert the teacher to the condition beforehand. I personally feel like expecting them to just instantly understand what is going on and the context of, I was in an accident without any other information is unreasonable. Therefore, in my opinion, due to the fact that they had no prior information to justify the insubordination, it's hard to feel particularly satisfied with this in context of the spirit of the sub. That said, for the shock value alone I imagine it was totally worth it, and still a great story which you told wonderfully such that I could imagine it perfectly. Nice creative writing project. So it's only policy if it's personally convenient for you, then. The repetition of, but that's a separate tragedy, was damn near poetic. It's actually a literary device used in classic literature and I found it so charming here. So they were unreasonable, then retaliated when you called them on it. I hope you disputed that grade. Separate tragedy. So many tragedies in this story. Two ships collide whilst approaching the docks. But that's a seaport tragedy. You said, fishnet t-shirt, and I knew it was the 80s. I had one, black, about the same time. And that's the same tragedy. Edit to add. I had actually forgotten that particular crime of fashion. I still remember the skinny leather ties in every color plus some nature never intended. I would go to class hatless for the rest of the semester. And sit in the front row. So sorry I didn't bring a hat. They're not allowed in the classroom. Separate tragedies is a way of life. But that's a separate tragedy. I think we have the catchphrase of 2022. One can apply it to many things. Delightful. I love all the separate tragedies. But the MC takes the cake. Saying you were in a car accident doesn't tell her what's going on. If you said you had gotten stitches on your head, then I'm sure she would have been fine with it right away. Too long did not read. The teacher saw the stitches and said Op could put the hat back on. Op, much like his entire story, gave an exhausting reply before putting it back on. It's funny that all of my teachers were like this in high school. No hats, no gum. Then I went to college and they didn't care at all what you wore, hats included. You could call them by their first names, eat an entire meal during class. All rules went out the window. Hashtag opens post to see funny compliance. Hashtag post. The car accident was of the side impact variety and it was brutal. This was great. If you don't write already, you should start. I'm British, so we wear school uniform and a hat isn't part of it. One of my class had cancer and wore a hat or scarf as she didn't like the wig, and a teacher started yelling at her in the school gym to take it off. The teacher was over the other side of the room and the entire class as one ran in front of our classmate and started yelling at the teacher. It was a beautiful moment of solidarity. When she understood why our friend was wearing it, she apologized. When I was in high school, the front pad of my helmet fell out during a particularly rigorous tackle practice. I had an acne problem due to the helmet and my hormones, so when this happened the helmet basically skinned my entire forehead into a horrific mess. The following day teachers would ask me to remove my hat. I would remind him that the policy of no hats did not include, and should not include, hats that had the school logo on them, such as the ones I had from athletics. They insisted, and so I complied to reveal the gaping wound that was my forehead. Bonus effect, I frequently bled through the bandages that day. This happened in 4 of 6 periods, the reveal, not the bleeding through the bandages. Your separate tragedies really enhance the story. Rolling on the floor laughing. Hands down, best storytelling I've read in malicious compliance. Without practice, I wouldn't write nearly as well as you. But that's a separate tragedy. I had something similar happen in middle school. Had 5 staples in the side of my head and a nice shaved patch. Went to school with a small bandage covering it and a beanie to hide it all. One of my fave teachers saw me get dropped off and came up, told me I couldn't wear my hat in class, so before the morning bell rung make sure to take it off. I explain in a deadpan face I was pistol whipped and had 5 staples in my head I was hiding. She just looked at me and went, "Cool story, take it off," so I did and showed her. She freaked out, apologized and gave me a note to carry and give to anyone at the school that told me to take it off. Was a great day till a friend gave me a nuggie and ripped his knuckles over my staples. But that's a separate tragedy. Proper steps would have been to get a doctor's note and communicate with the teacher.